Hey, it's Matt from Custom Car Grills here with a mesh install for the side pieces and lower center section on a 2017 through 19 Subaru Impreza. The side piece mod only works for the sport model, and the factory pieces should look like this one that has been removed from the bumper. After it's off the bumper, let's flip this around and temporarily remove the gloss black accent piece. These are held in by 3 Phillips head screws and 2 plastic clips. I used a number 1 Phillips screwdriver to remove the screws and a flathead screwdriver to pry open the plastic clips. And now the accent piece can be removed and set off to the side. Next up, let's dive into the cutting part with our Dremel, and I'll equip it with their number 543 cutting and shaping wheel. Starting on the back is going to be the best approach to begin with. This cut just needs to be somewhat close to the edge of where the stock diamond pattern and the flat non-textured area is. I'm just trying to get the bulk of the stock design out for now, and this will be refined down much more in just a moment. And once the main piece is out, now I'll have a different angle of approach available to get closer to the edge. This is where some patience and a steady hand will be very important. I don't want to rush this step, and staying super accurate with the cuts will get the best results. Finding just the right angle for the cuts can be tricky and is an ever-evolving process throughout this mod. This plastic is very soft and can spray everywhere. Behind the scenes, I have some safety goggles on to protect my face. After that initial rough cut, let this cool down some and then start to pick off some of the larger burnt bits so that we can see where more work is needed. Some of the finer plastic bits may have melted into the surrounding area and can be difficult to pick off. With a clearer look at the cuts, I'm going to dive back in to smooth out the straight line areas and make the corners a little bit more crisp. Then it's another round of picking off some burnt bits. And now this should be looking quite a bit better, though there will likely be some stuck on bits that are being kind of stubborn. To help with some of those bits that can't be done by hand, I'll grab an X-Acto knife and try to carefully cut them out. The knife can also be used to refine down those straight lines or tighten up the corners a little bit better too. Though, be careful not to dig into the plastic too much and carve out a spot you didn't want to. For the last refinement of the cuts, I'll get a sanding block out and wrap some 180 grit sandpaper on it. These rectangular blocks work great for getting that perfectly straight line. And I also have a rounded one that has a curve to it that's very similar to the tip of this inner cut. As a finishing touch, I'll get out some 320 grit paper and work over these areas a little bit by hand. This is the time to correct any inconsistencies because we're done cutting and shaving this down. I'll make one more pass of picking off burnt bits before moving on. Now, I did notice some discoloration from either the cutting or the picking portion. I'm going to restore the color back with some flat black trim paint by Spray Max. This dries quickly and evenly, and is a good step if you encounter the same discoloration I did. Here's how mine looks now, all cut, sanded, and painted up. We're looking pretty good so far, but before we install the mesh, I need to put that gloss black accent piece back in. Of course, this could be the perfect time to change up the accent piece to a different color, such as something brighter or maybe color matching. Anyway, these just clip and screw back in the opposite way that they were removed, and now we're all set for the mesh. Speaking of which, here's the mesh pieces that we have for sale on our website. These are pre-cut and pre-formed specifically for the 2017 through 19 Impreza Sport. If you have the pre-made front centerpiece, these are made from the same black hexagon mesh to match. The mesh lays on the back of the side grille like so. Make sure to have the correct piece on each side. They're very similar, but also different. Next, I'll grab some cable ties and foam. The foam will help protect the finish of the grille, and the ties will help temporarily hold the mesh to the grille. With these mesh pieces, they're made oversized so that there will be intentionally a lot of overlap on the back. Also, when tying these on, try to get the tie through a hexagon near the edge of the grille with the head of the tie resting on the back of the mesh. If the tie is up too high, it'll move the mesh out of position and will likely need to be redone. In this closer look, we can see that this is a fairly simple step, but it's also a very important one to get right. I don't want to over tighten the ties because this can cause distortion. We just want to have this flush and tight up against the back of the grille and nothing more. With this edge that's by the light, make sure that the mesh isn't bent too far or not enough, and adjust if needed so that it rests on there with the correct angle. Afterward, I'll come back in with some wire cutters and trim off the tail ends of the ties. It's also a good time to double check your work from the front before moving on. Now, to bond the mesh and grille together, I'll grab some automotive goop. This stuff works great for mixed materials such as metal and plastic. To dispense the goop, I like to use a toothpick to guide it into the areas I want it to go. Off camera, I have a small fan blowing on this grill. The air movement helps prevent the goop from running all over the place and into areas I don't want it to go. This stuff takes a long time to cure, plan on a solid 24-hour cure time for this specific adhesive. Just keep working over the areas where the mesh and grill come near contacting until there's full coverage in and around those spots. I let this sit for a day, and afterward I came back to cut off the ties and threw them away along with the foam. Let's flip this around and see how it turned out. Wow, this looks really cool. It's a big difference from where we started with, and combined with the upper grille, this is a great accent piece. Adding on the lower piece too completes the full set of all of the front grille spots. And speaking of that, let's move on to a quick install of the lower mesh. The mesh piece is pre-cut with all the right notches made in all the right spots. I removed the lower part for demonstration purposes, but it can be left on the bumper and installed from behind. Installation is simple. We include some ties to fasten the mesh to the existing framework. For the left and right edge, I'm going to use automotive goop to hold down the mesh in place. Since there's not a good way to tie that spot, there's not many alternatives to the goop. When it comes to tying the mesh on, I'm just simply strategically placing the ties as close to the top and bottom edge as possible. This positioning will help hide the ties some and make for a relatively clean install. Once the ties are in place, just cut off the tail ends and throw them away. The install is now complete. Let's check it out from the front. Hey, this looks really good. The mesh is super flush up to the back of the grille, and the ties are barely noticeable here up close and will be very well hidden when it's back on the vehicle. Here's how this turned out for my local owner who's helped with sourcing the parts and letting me make these mesh pieces for them. A shout out to Mike and his wife for all of their patience. Well, that's all I have for this video. I hope you liked it, and if you have any questions, please let me know, and thanks for watching.